This is Les Strong, and you're listening to the Fulham Focus podcast.
Fulham.
Hello and welcome to the Fulham Focus podcast. My name is Jmac, your host. The international break is over. God, that felt like a long one, this one. And thank goodness we can wash away the stain of such ugly scenes from Bulgaria with a crisp white laundry detergent that is Fulham FC this Saturday at Stoke. How will we line up? Can we start turning draws into wins again? And how do we feel about those pesky Potters? Don Love and Morgan are here to talk all this with me on the other side of this. Mr. Matt Boisclair and Baldwin chatting about some bloke called Chris Baird. Take it away, Mr. French.
Fulham.
Right, I'm joined by Matt Baldwin to talk about a player who had a tough start to his Fulham career. But slowly but surely, things turned around for him and he got the Fulham fans on side with some excellent performances under numerous managers. Arguably, this Northern Ireland International's most memorable moment happened at the ground we visit this weekend. I give you Chris Baird, or Bairdinho as he's more affectionately known these days. He signed for the Whites in July 2007 for around £3 million and followed fellow Northern Ireland international teammates Stephen Davis and Aaron Hughes to the club and was joined by David Healy shortly afterwards as Laurie Sanchez tried to replicate the success he had in charge of Northern Ireland at Fulham. He was Southampton's Player of the Year the previous season in a team that also contained Gareth Bale. Baldo, did this signing excite you at all at the time?
It did. I think of the Northern Irish players that we brought in during that spell, I think Chris Baird was the one that rather excited me the most because I'd heard a lot about him. I think, as you said, he won Southampton's Player of the Season, and I think he also got in the Championship Team of the Year the year before, or the year before we signed him. So he came with sort of relatively high expectations, and so of that group, I thought, hang on, we may have something here because I think it was around about that time that we started sort of phasing out Moritz Volz and Liam Rosenior as the right back. So I thought, hang on, we've got a decent enough replacement here. So yeah, of the lot, I thought it was a fantastic move.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to talk about Baird, but I think there was a lot of expectation on David Healy because he was knocking them in for Northern Ireland, and did he score against England in that game that Northern Ireland won 1-0? It was him, wasn't it? Yeah. And as I said, Stephen Davis too, who was ended up being a real disappointment for Fulham, but then went on to have a decent career elsewhere afterwards. So yeah, I don't really remember knowing much about Chris Baird, but it was in that summer when we seemed to make a signing almost every day and spent quite a bit of money as well. And there was just kind of a big question mark over whether or not Laurie Sanchez was going to be a decent manager in the Premier League. And it turned out not to be. But anyway, he was soon done away with and the rest is history. Looking back to that season of 2007 and 8, though, Chris Baird made a less than impressive start to his Fulham career and fell out of favour after starting at right back after a few games. I remember he wasn't particularly popular amongst Fulham fans. People were getting on his back after a few mistakes. Did you expect him to leave once Roy Hodgson took over and we stayed up without him playing much of a part?
I wasn't 100% sure because I think when Roy Hodgson came in, there was just a whole load of just chaos around what was going to happen and whether or not any of the players that are still with us were going to stay or whether or not Roy was going to bring in a whole batch of fresh faces, which he ended up doing with Handingham. But talking about Chris Baird, you talked about his rough start. I remember the first time I saw him, because the first couple of weeks of the season I was on holiday, but the first game I was back for was the Tottenham Hotspur game, the famous 3-3 Kamara overhead kick. And Gareth Bale absolutely tore him apart that day. He was having an absolute nightmare. But for some reason, I can't remember if it was like a goal line clearance or a blocked shot or something along those lines. There was something in the second half that for some reason everyone seemed to forgive him for, because he was given a torrid time that day, but he just made one magnificent moment. So magnificent I can't remember it fully, but I just remember that it happened. And it gave us this idea that, right, okay, maybe he can do something in the future. But yeah, to say that he was had a horrid start is very much an understatement because, well, in fairness, the whole team was pretty poor the first half of that season. So it was just, I think it was just a case of him being, a bad apple in a bunch of bad apples.
Yeah, I thought he'd leave after that season, to be honest. You had Paul Stalteri playing right back, and obviously Hughes and Hangland eventually playing centre-half and forming that formidable partnership as well. That started in the second half of that season, and I thought he'll be gone at the end of the season. But credit to him, he stayed and stuck at it. During the 2009-10 season, he often played in central midfield, which wasn't what he was signed for, but he kind of made that position, almost his own for a period of time. And it's probably a position that he may be best remembered for whilst at Fulham. Where did you see his most effective position when he was at Fulham?
Because he played very much all over the place. But I think his best position, I don't think he really got a chance to play that often. I think he was best suited to be a defensive midfielder. Once we saw Dixon too start to slowly be drifted out of the squad, I thought he would have been an absolutely perfect defensive midfield partner for Danny Murphy. Chris Baird as the rock at the heart of that midfield, and then Danny Murphy sort of distributing the passes elsewhere. So yeah, he played right back, he played left back, I'm sure he dabbled at centre back. I'm sure, as you mentioned, 9-10. He played in central midfield as well. He was a jack of all trades, and we're thankful for him for it. But yeah, personally, I think it was a defensive midfield would have been the position that he could have really made his own, but he just never really got the chance to.
You talk about him playing centre half, and I haven't researched this, so maybe my memory playing tricks on me. But I seem to remember he scored a cracking own goal, maybe against West Ham at the Hammersmith end. Do you remember that? Have I made that up?
Was it a cross coming over from the wing and he just headed it in?
Yeah, I think he probably buried it.
I think that was against Birmingham. I think that was Birmingham. Then that was the game Zamora scored with a free kick in the last minute. I know exactly the goal you're talking about. I can picture it vividly, and I think it was from that game.
Belting finish, though, from what I remember of it.
Oh yeah, well, the fact he couldn't have done it more often, in the right end, it's just a bit of a shame.
Well, we'll come on to his goals in a minute, but I just wanted to touch upon the Europa games first, because I don't really remember much about him playing in the Europa games. But looking it up, he played for instead of Danny Murphy, in the Juventus game, because Danny Murphy was suspended for his stupid sending off against Shakhtar Donetsk. I know you've got a great memory of that season. What do you remember of Baird in Europe?
If I'm being brutally honest, my abiding memory of him was from the Europa League Final, and just thinking, if John Pansel had been playing, I reckon we'd have won that game, because it was for Diego Forlan's winner. I think it was Chris Baird got chased down by, could have been anyone. I've tried to erase that. Could have been Aguero for all I know. Could have been Reyes. Could have been any of them lot. Got chased down and beaten to the ball, and then crossed in, and we know the rest. So that was really my abiding memory. But we're here to praise him, not say how bad he was. But yeah, his performances in that Juventus game in particular, because wasn't he with Jonathan Greening in central midfield?
Was that what in the final?
In the Juventus game, I could swear it was him and Jonathan Greening in central midfield. And it was, and then Stephen Kelly at right back, and you just think, how the hell did we managed to beat Juventus with that team?
No, it must have been Dixon Atuhu, because Dixon Atuhu set up the Dempsey goal, didn't he?
I could swear Jonathan Greening played a role. I could swear Greening was. I probably dumped it in the joy that was the Clint Dempsey goal that we've talked about ad nauseum previously. So my abiding memory would be the Europa League Final, sadly, but that's not to discredit anything he did during the rest of the campaign, in which every single player was phenomenal, and he was just part of a great team.
Yeah, agreed. Well, the reason we're talking about the man who was eventually to become affectionately known as Bairdinho this week is, of course, with one eye on the Stoke game this weekend, and perhaps Stoke away in December 2010 was his finest hour in a Fulham shirt. Talk me through what happened that day.
Well, I can't remember which order it came in, but I know there was one from a free kick, and there was one from an absolute thunderbolt.
The thunderbolt was the first one.
The Thunderbolt was the first one, thank you. So I remember watching it at home, sitting on my floor on a dodgy internet stream, because that's what we used to do back in the day before all this HD
internet streams.
Exactly. Before all the HD internet streams. This was back in the day where you couldn't tell what was going on and it was all being described in a language that you couldn't really recognize. Just being incredibly amazed by, I think I was reading on, Friends of Fulham or one of the other forums where, everything was being updated live. And I think the forum was like 30 seconds ahead. So you see, oh my God, what a goal. Oh my God, what a goal. What a screamer sort of thing. And then you're waiting to see, right, who's going to scare into it? Hang on, Chris Baird did that. How the hell has that happened? So it was great. And then the free kick as well, just another fantastic masterpiece. Why that didn't become the norm or like the prelude to everything, why wasn't he on free kick duty more often going forward is the question I want to know.
Maybe Chris Baird was the last centre-half to score a free kick for Fulham,
Maybe.
which is what we were talking about on the last pod.
It was, although I think he was playing left back that day. So there may be maybe Alfie Mawson was watching Chris Baird videos in the warm-up and thought, hang on, I could do this.
But he couldn't. Anyway, so the preamble to that game, of course, was that we hadn't won since the end of October. And we've got up to Stoke, a place notoriously difficult to get any points because their reputation back then was that, they were quite a physical side. And we've got up there, and Chris Baird stuck one in the top corner from about 25 yards from a knockdown from one of their defenders. And then, all inside the first 10 minutes, buries a free kick into the bottom corner as well from, I think, Danny Murphy touched it to Andy Johnson, or maybe the other way round. And then he's just come up and hit it. And we even had Danny Murphy on the pitch at the time. So why Danny Murphy wasn't taking the free kick, I have no idea. But that one worked absolutely spectacularly. And we went on to win 2-0.
Was it 2-0 that game? I could swear it was 2-1. Oh, well, obviously.
No, 2-0. 2-0.
Oh, yeah. You've done the research for this. I'm just some imbecile that's answering the questions.
Yeah,
but absolutely. And that was really the spark, wasn't it, for the rest of that season? Because I think after that game, we saw a complete change in style of play under Mark Hughes, and I don't think we really. We obviously lost games in between that, but I don't think any team properly came and dominated us apart from Liverpool right at the end of the season. I think after that game, we just went strength to strength and ended up finishing. Was it 8th that year? Maybe 9th? Somewhere along those lines. I remember that was the spark that finally reignited. Hang on, we're not a bad team.
And a word on the green and gold kit that we were wearing that day.
I knew this was going to get mentioned. Stuff today. That was an absolutely underrated kit.
Underrated.
I absolutely loved it, and because wasn't that whole? It was to do with like Harrods 100 and 100 celebration or something. Because of course, Al fired only Harrods at the time. It was Harrods. It was brilliant. I quite like to see that come back. One day, personally.
I mean, when I think of that kit, I immediately think of Chris Baird scoring those 2 goals. I can't remember us ever wearing it any other time. I'm sure we did, but that's all I can remember that game.
Yeah, same.
Legend. All right, well, let's talk about your favourite Bairdinho memory then. We've got the famous or infamous, let's say, chinning of Jimmy Bullard, the 2 goals at Stoke. He got a goal away at Reading, and he also got a winner at home to Aston Villa the week before that goal at Reading. Anything that particularly stands out for you?
Yeah, it's the winner against Aston Villa because I distinctly remember fans leaving sort of on the 88th minute. I don't know what minute Chris Baird scored. It could have been injury time, could have been 89, something like that.
It was very late, wasn't it?
It was incredibly late. And I just remember my only memory of that game and my only reaction when he scored was to turn round and shout at the people who were leaving, just sort of, well, you missed that. What utter idiots. I've toned the language down slightly. What utter idiots you are. The game's not over was my abiding memory. And again, going on a bit of a rant on the Fulham forums afterwards, is basically saying, right, own up. Who of you left the ground early? Shame on you. Again, words to that effect. So that's probably my abiding memory of Chris Baird in one of his 5 goals, I want to say, for Fulham. Could have been 4 goals for Fulham. Yeah, 4 goals.
It's classic Baldo behaviour, isn't it? I mean, one of these days we're going to be doing a feature on you, mate, and we're going to be coming up with our favourite Baldo memory.
It is, but thankfully they stay within the podcast chat, so I'm happy that's not going to happen.
Not always if I get my way. All right, so Bairdinho eventually left on a free transfer after 6 seasons and signed for Reading. Do you remember him leaving? And how did you feel when he left?
I remember feeling slightly disappointed when he left because, again, we had this utility player. Whenever we're short a left back or a right back or a central midfielder or a centre back, we know that we've got a reliable, whoever, whatever role it may be, waiting in the wings to take over. So if ever we went through an injury crisis, we could always say, right, Chris Baird, up you come. So yeah, I was slightly annoyed that we lost out. Not just a good player, but a very useful player. And the fact that he signed for Reading, of all teams, was just rather bizarre. That's all I can really recall of it.
From his point of view, though, you've got to think: do I want to be just a backup player for Fulham in case anybody else gets injured? Because arguably, there was a case for him to start.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a case, and I'm not gonna criticize him for moving to Reading. I just thought it was a bit bizarre because it was a bit of a step down. But yeah, in sort of anyone's career, you can't really blame them for wanting to play first team football. I have no idea if he got first team football as a result because it's Reading and I can't stand them and I try to avoid them in any situation that I can. So yeah, you can't really get angry in the same way that I know. I was incredibly angry at Jimmy Bullard at the time. I wasn't exactly angry at Chris Baird for leaving in that sort of sense.
Well, his contract was just up and he left on a free, so fair play, and everyone wished him well, I think. He did, of course, come back on loan from Derby for a few months in the latter part of 2016, following spells with Burnley and West Brom, having lost his place in the team at Pride Park to Cyrus Christie, of all people. Do you remember anything about his return? And they say never go back, and who'd have thought that after his first season that his return would have been celebrated?
Yeah, it sort of touches on what we were talking about with Clint Dempsey when we did the player profile for him. You talk about never go back, and his second spell again wasn't exactly the most memorable. But then again, it was the second. It was the latter half of Slavica Kanovic's first season, so that whole second half of the season wasn't really the greatest. Apart from us vaguely being threatened with relegation at some stage. But yeah. Again, I was happy that he came back because, again, all the memories. And I remember everyone being excited. I think maybe his wife or girlfriend, one of the two. Not saying he has both. I just can't remember. I just can't remember which one it was. Wife / girlfriend. How about that? Basically, to say, we're coming home. Can't wait to be back at, the Craven Cottage along those lines. And I remember everyone sort of being very hyped up and excited about it, but. As we've discussed, the second time round is never quite as good as the first. And, Chris Baird's second stint at Fulham, again, wasn't really all that memorable. I can't remember if he scored a goal. I can't remember if he got sent off. I can't remember if he gave away any penalties. It just sort of amounted to nothing. I remember being there for his first game back at the Cottage. And again, everyone giving him a standing ovation when he came on. But other than that, it was really enough. It was really a nothing return.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, sadly. All I remember is being at the Medeski Stadium and him coming on as substitute, I think, and giving him a good round of applause and a cheer, but I don't remember anything. But then I don't remember anything much about that season anyway. It was just a bit rubbish. All I do remember is when Slav took over just before, around Christmas time, I just remember there being a picture on the internet of Slav sat on this plane saying, I'm on my way, something like that. But, the rest of that season was a bit of a write-off. So Baird announced his retirement early this year, in February. Talk to me about how he's regarded amongst Fulham fans these days.
I think the majority of the fans would, remember him fondly. Again, you mentioned earlier about how disastrous the first season was, but he sort of picked himself up afterwards, and he may not go well. He certainly won't go down as a great player, but he'll certainly go down as everyone's going to remember where going to remember Chris Baird and have fond memories. Much in the same way, John Pansil is never going to go down as Fulham's greatest right back, but at the same time, he was great. He was great for us, and everyone's going to have great memories. I don't think anyone is going to have a bad word to say about him. When you first think of Chris Baird, no one's going to say how terrible he was the first half of his first season. Everyone's going to go...
Except us earlier on this evening, of course.
Except for us, yeah, obviously. Well, that's good. That's because you structured the questions. But you talk bloke in the pub, and he'll say, "Yeah, good utility player, good man."
Yeah.
No one. Their first memory isn't going to be a bad one, and that's
he's a cult hero, isn't he?
Yeah, the fact that Bairdinho has sort of stuck around in this sense. How many of the players from that Europa League team basically are still, get referred to by their nickname or as not vehemently, talking about the last part, as fondly as Chris Baird does. Yeah, it's just weird that it's never Chris Baird; it's always Bairdinho. So the fact that his nickname has sort of outlasted his actual name, I think is just a testament to it.
Yeah, completely agree. And he was given that nickname from memory for those strikes at Stoke, just because they were so magnificent. So it's good that will always be what you associate him with. So good for him. All right. Well, as I said before, he scored 4 goals and he played 165 games for Fulham. Rate his career out of 10.
It sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's nothing spectacular. Nothing does apart from. I hate having to bring it up every time, but it happened. Apart from the bad start, he picked himself up. I'm going to say somewhere between about a 6.5 to a 7, somewhere along those lines. A dependable man, but when you go back and look at really his whole time, if you had to pick an 11 of all the players he played with during that time, he's never going to get into your first team.
Yeah, I think that he's one of those players who, when he played for you, you probably, aside from that start, always give him at least a 7 out of 10. So I think a 7 out of 10 is fair. Very reliable player, could play anywhere. So, 7 out of 10 sounds fair. All right, Baldo, thank you for that. Let's pass it back to the guys to do the Stoke preview.
Fulham.
Thank you very much, Frenchie, and thank you very much, Mr. Rees. All right, guys, well, let's talk about Stoke then. Let's talk about Stoke this coming Saturday at the Britannia Stadium. But first, actually, let's quickly talk about the positives of the international break, in fact. Don, why don't you start us off? Mr. Tim Ream did well for you, didn't he?
Mixed reviews. We played Cuba, big whoop. It's like you guys playing Gibraltar, probably. I'd compare it that way. But we beat up on Cuba. No problems there. I love Tim Ream, but he is prone to making mistakes. And what I mean by that is, like in the Charlton game, Charlton got a cross. They put the cross in. It's kind of fumbled around in the box. Tim Ream kind of gets his foot on it, pokes it out. It only goes as far as the outside of the box, and a goal ends up happening. Well, he did the same thing, sadly, in the Canada game, and it caused the goal. So, yeah, it is what it is. But he was captain for the 4th time, so that's very positive. It's probably one of the only positives I can take out of that game for Tim Ream. So, the other big thing, though, the really big thing, to me at least, is Mitro again is on fire. Did you guys happen to catch his goal at any of the game, the highlights?
I saw them sort of coming up on the highlights on the Fulham Twitter and a couple other things.
He was the right man in the right place again for 2 goals, and I believe that rounds him out for 30 international goals now.
They were proper sort of strikers finishes, weren't they? They're proper, a combined total
right
of
man,
about
right
sort of
place.
like 5 yards out, I think.
Yeah, right man, right place. You gotta love that. So, Jmac, I really hope that we can start doing what Serbia has been doing for him and just let him be that poacher in the right place, right time, and start getting some balls in for him. I know he's got 11 goals for us, but I think he could do a lot better if we had a little more service to him.
I completely agree. And I think, actually, we should talk about Stefan Johansson, his international duty. Captained the side against Spain. Came off, I think, in around the 58th minute for Sorloth, I believe his name is. Did very well. And good thing he came off early enough, because it gives me an idea that he may be starting potentially this Saturday. But we'll come to that. And we'll also quickly say that who is the other international person on duty who did well?
Give congrats to Steve Sess. He got to come on.
Oh, really? That was for the under-21s, wasn't it? Or the under-18s? Or something? No, under-21s.
Under-21s, yeah.
I think I read that he was a key part of their 3rd goal. I didn't get to see it, but I think that's what I read, is he was a key part of their 3rd goal. So good for him. Made the international team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this. All right, we've talked about Mitchell and the internationals. Well done. That's actually the only shining light that we can say about the internationals because of recent ugliness with England. But yes, this Saturday, the Britannia Stadium. I mean, what are your thoughts then, guys, how we should line up for this game? I mean, is it time that we think that Bobby Reid should be a starter in place of Cavallero, or is just there maybe another sort of forward role? Because we can all agree that we're not really sure about him as the central midfield role anymore. Morgan, what are your thoughts on the general lineup, if we should change anything at all?
I think we should probably be going with the same lineup at the start of the second half against Charlton. I thought Stephen Cess was injured, but maybe he's actually fit again now. But I would be sort of tempted to go with Adoy at right back for this one. I think you've got to bring Harry Arter back in. I think he just adds that bit of solidity that although Harrison Reed's come in and done really well, I think for this game, you're playing against a team who need the points. They've just had a fairly sort of inconveniently timed international break, having just won a game for the first time this season. So I think you bring Arter in, you have Steph Joe sitting back with him, and then in the midfield, yes, you got to play Bobby Reid. I think he did really well in the last game when he came on. I would have him and Cavallero on the pitch at the same time, and have Knockaert on the bench. Just to start, and then with Kearney in the middle. But the thing is, you look at where Reid plays, and he can play on the left, he can play on the right, but is he better through the middle? But then where do you put Kearney? Do you put him out on the right to cut in, left to cross? But that's not really his best position. So I think you've got a bit of an issue there. But I would definitely have him starting. I think he deserves his chance. And I think, whilst I don't think Cavallero or Knockaert did anything wrong, I think we've touched on their shortcomings, but neither of them have sort of done badly. And obviously, Cavallero scored that great goal against Charlton. So I think we need to sort of give Reid a go, bring Knockaert on, as the game wears on and the Stoke players are tiring. But I think that's going to be important because the Stoke team, they're going to be they might be quite resilient. And I'm sure over the last sort of 2 weeks since their last game, Nathan Jones will be drumming into them the importance of playing tight against us and hitting us on the counter. So obviously, having Dennis, who's probably a little bit more defensive right back, along the other usual three will be quite important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think Dennis Adoy should be starting. Steve Sassignon, obviously, good international appearance for the under-21s and also just generally had a very good start for us. But I think against a side like Stoke, we might need that extra bit of muscle and experience that Adoy can provide. Interesting your thoughts on Knockaert. Don, I'll go to you with that one. Would you replace Knockaert for Reid in this scenario? Because usually at the moment it's been Cavallero for Reid. I mean, has Knockaert actually done anything to sort of, lose his place for this game slightly, would you say?
No, I don't think he's lost his place. I think it's actually a really interesting and not a bad lineup or way to set the team up that Morgan's talking about there. I would do things a little bit different on this one. And I'll give you a quick background of what I want to do and why I want to do it. So if you look at Stoke City, I went back and I looked at their last several games, and they basically have been doing two formations. Number one, they either park the bus and it's just an old-fashioned 4-4-2, and that's what they did against Nottingham Forest, and it was unsuccessful for them. Or what they've actually done the last two games is they set up in a 4-1-2-1-2, which, basically you're playing really narrow down the middle, and you're trying to just kind of go for it kind of thing, which I understand, them doing that against Huddersfield. I think, they had a good chance against another team not far off from them, but I was really surprised that they did it against Swansea. And in the last minutes of the match, they pulled it off and they got a goal. So good for them. Impressive. But I also think it was kind of lucky. So for me, if they set up like that, or even if they set up parking the bus, I'd change the whole thing up, and I would go like what Morgan was kind of alluding to in the beginning. I'd set up like we did in the second half, where we just have three in the back, and I'd leave Knockaert on, and I'd bring Bobby Reid back in, okay? And I'd go more attacking. We're at home. We're against a team at the bottom of the table. let's just pound them. I say go for it and let's hit them hard. And the reason I set up like this, and I'll even give you the players, I would do, like I said, the three in the back, obviously Betts in goal, Mawson, Ream, Bryan. I drop Steven. Nothing against him or anything. I drop him. And the reason I drop him is so Bobby Reid can come on. I put Harry Otter in front of him. I want him to clean things up, make sure that, if we need a fourth in the back, he's there to help. 4 in the middle, Knockhart, Steph Joe, Tom Canny, Ivan. Get us some width. And then up top, I actually would like to see Bobby Reid play with Mitro, play off of Mitro. And in the last couple games where you see Bobby Reid, he's always in the box. He was kind of like, I said this before, a Ryan Sess who was looking for that ball, and he was ready to be picking up the crumbs and making something happen. So I really like the way he plays and he gets into the attack, especially in the box. So I don't think it'd be a bad idea to have somebody playing off Metro and, feed Metro even maybe a little better. So that's my thoughts. Just 3-1-4-2, Sess on the bench, bring on Bobby Reid, let them attack and go for it.
All right. Okay. 3-1-4-2. I mean, that sounds kind of similar actually to the sort of three at the back formation that we had at the World Cup last year with England, with Sterling and Kane up top. And actually, I mean, that could very much, I think it, I never thought that three at the back is something you would actually see again. I know it's something that Scott Parker adapted to quite well for using in the most recent games, but I never thought it would be a strength of ours, especially after the horror show that was last season. But I think that's a very good idea. And I mean, let's talk about we haven't seen these guys for quite a while. And the last time we saw them, Mr. Morgan, we were hammered 4-1 at this stadium and they relegated us. So it's a bit of an Avengers mission happening right now. I mean, are you still bitter? I mean, were you there at that game live? Or, I mean, what were you doing when we were relegated by that bloody Stoke?
I do remember exactly what I was doing. I wasn't there. It was a friend's birthday, and we'd been out for the whole day, and I just got really, really drunk. I had some other bad news during the day, and I remember that plus us being relegated, and I just thought, you know what, just went hell for leather. Don't remember anything after about 8 p.m. that day. And yeah, I woke up the next day. I was like, is it real? It's real. It was, double hangover. But I think in terms of, I think by that point, I don't think it was a shock. I don't think we can have too much beef with Stoke sending us down that day. And no. I think that was the day. That was the day that Dan Burn played right back, wasn't it? So
I think it was, yeah. And
he may be this new sort of superhuman defender for Brighton, but he certainly isn't a right back for anyone. And no. I think when we went down, it was just like, fine, okay. But a lot of things have changed since then. It'll be interesting to see how Stoke recover from their bad starts of the season. And I think when you look at a team like that who have spent, quite a few years in the Premier League, they've come down, they've had a bit of restructuring, they brought in a young English manager, and then they find themselves at the foot of the league, 10 games in or how far we're in. They're in an interesting position. And I think the Stoke board themselves have been very patient. Unlike a lot of chairmen, they would have fired Nathan Jones by now, but they've given him time. He's got that win. Now, are they so patient that a loss to Fulham will see him keep his job? Because we all know that we are the Grim Reaper for a lot of managers. You lose to Fulham, you lose your job. So I think the players are going to be fighting for their lives. The manager is going to be telling them they're fighting for his job as well. So I think we need to go there and get the win. We need to turn these draws into wins, but at the same time, they are going to be fighting. And I think it's going to be a good game. I reckon there's going to be a lot of frustration through it. So, yeah, we shall see how it goes.
Well, you mentioned we are the Grim Reaper for managers, and I remember we were the Grim Reaper. Well, almost. We pretty much sealed the deal for Mark Hughes. And I think when I remember us getting relegated by Stoke, I think it was Mark Hughes being the manager that really added the bitterness on the tongue for me, and especially an excellent Stoke display delights Mark Hughes as the video preview message as I'm looking at the result here, which is just awful. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think it's a funny one with Nathan Jones because they went for a manager who has this very sort of attacking. It's very hard to change a style. To go from Gary Rowett to Nathan Jones is always going to be a tough tough situation. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Dunn, with Nathan Jones, but also just generally the business with Stoke, and if you have any?
I don't have any bitter towards them. I mean, we were awful, so
yeah,
the writing was on the wall. There's nothing we could do. I will correct myself real quick earlier. I said we were going to be at home. I know I realized we're going to be away. I still would not change my lineup or how we play. As to Nathan Jones, I was just reading an article that Stoke brought in. What is his name again? He's a hero. His name is Jonathan Walters. They brought him in to do the U18 team. Because he just recently retired, and they are already calling for him to step up and become their head manager. So, the manager's head is on the chopping block, and if he doesn't continue with another win or a positive result, I could see him gone very soon. So maybe we end up being their boogie team instead of them being the one that causes our managers to be fired. So, I wish
it's always the way. You get a club legend in inverted commas come back to the club, or manage one of the youth teams. As soon as you start doing badly, all the fans just want to see him in the hot seat. And it's we had it with Kit Simmons, which is apparently how you pronounce his name after last weekend.
Is it really?
Sunday. Well, yeah, because Ivan Berry, they had Chris Coleman and Kit on the pitch, and he was calling him Kit Simmons, and everyone was kind of like, "What? Is it Simmons?"
You don't think he was just being polite and not correcting him?
Well, I don't know, but if it is Simmons, for the last 20 odd years, be getting his name wrong. But so he, there was the situation obviously with when McGat was gone, bringing in Mr. Simons, and that's it gets the fans energized again, and it is those things. It may not be the most tactically sort of on point manager, and I'm talking about Walters here, not just Simmons, but it's one of those that reinvigorates the club, having a legend take the hot seat. So if the situation does arise, I mean, it doesn't really bother me after Saturday, but will the Stoke fans still be behind Nathan Jones if we go 1-0 ahead, or will it be that turning point that goes, you know what, let's clear out this manager, we're going to get the new guy in, and just let the game go, I guess. But I don't think the players will do that.
I mean, I don't think we can really afford to have another draw. I mean, of course, I know it's only October, but we need to actually get 3 points and not a draw. We can't keep saying, "Oh, that's a good point away from home" anymore, can we?
No. And here's the thing. We've played several of the teams that are more towards the mid and the top table. Okay. Now our next 3 games, including this one, we're going after teams that are more towards the bottom of the table. And if we can't get positive results against these teams at the bottom of the table, get the points that we need now, it's just going to make it that much harder later on when we're playing the teams that are on form and are at the top of the table. So next 3 games to me are very important. All 3 of them should be winnable games that we get all 3 points, and that pushes us up into the top 4, top 5.
Hopefully. I mean, what would you say, Morgan? Out of the next 3 games, we have Stoke, Borough, and Luton. I think it's in that order. It might be the wrong way around. But would you say, how many points would you take from those next 3 games as acceptable for a team aiming for automatics?
Well, we've got to be getting 7 points from those 3 games. I think we need to... One of Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough's the third of those 3. We've got Luton midweek next week. So we need to be beating Luton at home. I mean, that's, all fairness to Luton. They've come up and done pretty well. But if we're going to be sort of pushing promotion, you have to be seeing those teams off. Middlesbrough, they had a bit of a mixed start. I think Woodgate's kind of getting it together there. They're in the same sort of situation whereby, having a lot of draws as well, I think. But I can see us getting a draw out of either the Stoke or the Middlesbrough game, but we need to be winning 2 of them. So there we go. But if we get 7 points out of those 3, I'd be satisfied. But we look at those 3 games. If we are candidates for promotion, we should be getting 9.
Yeah, completely agree. I think 9 points is a must for sure in the situation we're in, because there's only we can only say so many times that a draw is acceptable, and it could start slipping away from us quite quickly. We had some results that we're very fortunate with a few weeks ago. All right, guys. Well, look, now it's one of my favorite times. Thank you to the wonderful Matthew Arter. We're going to do my favorite musical, which is Stats. Now, let's quickly have a look. Guys, before I go into some statistics of, our history of Stoke and our win record, all this kind of thing, I'd like you to maybe pinpoint a couple of key men that we should be looking out for in this game. And Don, I'll go to you first. I mean, who's someone that we should really be watching or getting, Johansson to give a really firm tackle to in this game?
Well, a good one for me, if it's going to be a Steph Joe moment, a classic Steph Joe moment, where he lets everybody know, hey, I'm here and I ain't going to let you score. I guess you have to take out their midfielder. How do you say his last name? Sam
Klukas, I think.
Klukas.
Yeah,
Okay.
Klukas.
He is played in, I think, almost all their games, I believe. And I think he's kind of up there as their leading scorer. Not like they have a lot of goals, but that's the guy who I want Steph Joe to, a little shithousery. I'm okay with that.
God, I love him so much. Johansson, not you, Don. I love you too, though. It's fine.
I was going to say, come on, how do you not love me?
Of course I love you. Mr. Morgan, anyone else that we should be keep eye on? I know they're bottom of the table, but I mean, they have got some players still left over from that amazing well, I don't know if they do now. I mean, they bought Adobe and all those players when they got relegated, but they have made some interesting buys recently.
Yeah, I think one of the ones you got to watch out for is Scott Hogan, who they got on loan from Aston Villa at the beginning of the year. He scored, I think he scored 3 goals so far. He kind of went to Villa with a lot of promise. I mean, he did pretty well at Brentford his time there. Before that, he was at Rochdale. And he didn't really cut it at Villa, but he was at Sheffield United, I think, big turn of the year. But then he went to Stoke in the summer on loan. But he's a decent striker. He's not particularly big, but I think he's quite quick. And we're just got to be careful of sort of guys who, not, I said he's not on a Mitro kind of scoring run, but he's on, he's half decent. So they're going to be getting the ball to him, and got to be careful if Ream's slightly, still tired from a lot of travelling. And so we've got to keep an eye on him. But at the other end of the pitch, their goalkeeping situation is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because they've kept Jack Butland, who is an England international. I mean, he's obviously not in the squad at the moment, but I don't think he is anyway. But he's had an absolute shocker this season, and his confidence is all over the place by the looks of it. And I think they bought in Adam Federici, who was at, I think he was at Bournemouth last year, but he's been pushed out. And actually, no, I don't think he was at Bournemouth. He was somewhere, but he kind of a bit of a journeyman keeper. But he's come in. I think he's definitely pushing Butland for the number 1 spot. But I mean, that's a real fall from grace for Butland. So whether it's things going on in his private life, or whatever, or if he's just really having that time in a keeper's life where a little bit of confidence and everything starts going wrong for him. So I think we need to, regardless of who the keeper is, I think we need to get a lot of shots in. Don't spend too much time constantly trying to work the ball into the box. And I think it'll be interesting. But
one of the stats on that goalkeeper is that he's always letting a goal in every 42 minutes. Well, I'm hoping he lets a goal in every 15 for us.
Yeah. Well, it could be.
What's that?
That'll
be 6-0.
Well, that'd be nice. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I think the Jack Butland thing. I mean, there's obviously still a very good goalkeeper living in there somewhere, but I just think it's obviously, form is temporary, class is permanent. But I think the problem with his confidence is that he's playing a bloody Stoke. I don't know. I just think he had so much promise of returning to the Premier League soon. He's probably just completely caught up in the air with it at the moment.
Well, one of those things when you're a keeper, and this is kind of what I think is sort of, if you're playing for a team, then it's very individualistic being a goalkeeper. Obviously, if you're constantly exposed by shit centre backs, then more chance than not you're going to concede at least a couple of goals a game. But some of the goals that he was conceding were just simple errors. Now, regardless of the team that you're playing for, you should be stopping those, and he should be one of those keepers that is not single-handedly taking Stoke up the table, but making sure that they are in contention for at least the playoffs. And that's kind of one of those players that the fans will be looking at going, yes, thank God we kept him. But now they're looking at him going, I think he just needs to leave and we get some fresher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he's conceding that many errors, I wonder how much of a hard time he's getting. And poor Marcus Bettinelli got some from some of our fans as of late.
Well,
but
that's the thing. You forget about Bettinelli. It's great.
That's it. Well, look, I mean, there's another interesting stat before we dart off that. None of their defenders have played more than 7 out of 11 games so far. And one of them includes someone we were looking at, Cameron Carter-Vickers, one of your men, Don. So it does look like it could be in our favour, but who knows? Maybe that win has given them a bounce. But I'm sure we have a team that can just completely outmatch this squad. Now, and yeah, just to see all this off, I mean, like, another interesting stat from Mr. Arter is that none of their defenders have played more than 7 out of 11 games so far. You have Danny Bath, Liam Lindsay, Bruno Martins, Indy. Beg your pardon. You have Danny Bath, Liam Lindsay, Bruno Martins, Indy, and Cameron Carter-Vickers, one of your lot, Don, who someone actually we were trying to get off of Spurs on loan. Have all started games at centre-back. So any combination could play us on Saturday, which means, they should be there for the taking, this team. We really should. With the team that we have, we should be winning this. 3 at the back, 4 at the back, whatever you want to do. And, the last time we faced up, we lost 4-1. But I remember one of the shining lights in that was Scott Parker. He was actually very good in that game for us. And I hope that will sort of be very symbolic for his return. And he'll be a complete master show for us, tactical-wise. All right, then, guys. Well, I mean, we can go through stats all day long, but let's just have a little score prediction. I mean, I think, actually, it's not about me, it's about you guys first. Mr. Morgan, what is your score prediction for this game?
I think it's going to be a tough game, but I think the way we play will eventually break down Stoke, and I don't think they'll have the quality to fight back. I think it'll be 2-1. Fulham.
2-1. Right, and for you, Mr. Don?
Okay, so playing the way I want to play with 3 in the back, we're constantly attacking. I think we're going to have a slow start. We just always do, it seems like. But before the first half, we're going to get first goal, come back. Second half, we're going to get 2 more goals, 3-0, final score.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to go for 3-1. I just feel like there's a sort of dodgy set piece from them that they're going to win. But I'm confident we can get the 3 points from this. And if we don't, then I really think we need to start thinking about, God help Morgan's wife for getting him out the gutter when he's drinking that night is all I can say.
It's going to be heavy.
Yeah, heavy. Absolutely terrible. Now, thank you very much, guys. I mean, actually, we've got a bit of good news quickly to sign us off with. I think, actually, yeah, Morgan, you showed me something on the screen just a second ago. Nothing naughty or anything. Just a. You saying
that wouldn't be good news?
No.
Let's not take the pod there.
Tell the millions and millions of listeners what you just showed me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one thing that we do have is a very strong youth team, it turns out. And during the international break, the under-18s beat West Ham's under-18s 5-1. And good to know, we're actually top of the South Premier League South under-18s league at the moment. It's still early doors, but we're up at the top in a league that contains Chelsea, West Ham, Arsenal, Leicester, and Spurs, and that is a really good sign for the youth team. And the guy who one guy who scored 4 goals in that game was Jay Stansfield, who we just talking about as he was the guy that we signed, we believe, from Hartlepool, and caused a little bit of controversy. But good to know that he sort of seems to be a decent player anyway, which might sort of explain why Hartlepool were quite pissed off at him leaving. But no, I think it's good to see our under 21s or whatever they are, the under 23s now not doing so well. But good to see that the under 18s are flying the flag for us.
Yeah, and look, that's obviously, controversy aside, it's very good to see the youth academy doing so well, and you can see really where the Khans have shoved a little bit of extra money, not just on transfers for our first team. Well, excellent, guys, excellent. And I've got to say as well, this has been so nice to speak to you both. I haven't spoken to you in ages. It's really nice. All right, thank you very much to my co-host for that lovely Stoke preview. We will see you again on Monday to review the Stoke win, hopefully. And in the meantime, if you like what you hear, please tell your friends about us. We are on Facebook. We have our own website, fulhamfocus.com. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. Just find us. We're absolutely everywhere, and we always love your support. Thank you very much again to my co-host. We will see you in a few days' time. Come on, you Whites. See you soon.